as guest editor of INSITE Commonplace, I think my main interest, of course, is to understand where one is now and where different ideas have, are trying to find a space in a world that has shifted. The artists I'm working with are also doing the same, in that they are also, for example, trying to work in reverse or to think in reverse, but also thinking about the cultural space in general, in Johannesburg or in South Africa, where we are. And the different museums that that exist, and I think for me, what's really interesting in this moment, or what I perceive of this moment, is that previously we were content in asking questions, and that those questions were critical. But I find that this moment, like a lot of people, myself included, become desperate for answers. I'm working in a context where, in South Africa, in a context where basically we are kind of top of the list of the most unequal societies in the world. And I think this is quite interesting for me in terms of like working with different people who are thinking around different ways of accessing also the digital, also these spiritual technologies. And so in terms of people that I'm speaking to, for the journal, for example, they have been researching these aspects. Sometimes it's scientific, purely scientific, but I'm interested in how these scientific modes of thinking come together with the artistic modes of thinking about similar things. So the people who will be coming together in the journal, for example, George Mahashe has been researching the idea of rain making or rain praying, because he comes from that lineage where he comes from a lineage of the Rain Queen, basically, but also thinking about the cosmos and how to localize the cosmos and to think about the cosmology in a local way, in ways that basically work in reverse, that go back into how our ancestors had understood the world and the cosmos, and be able to, tell the weather without having to watch TV, because those means were not there before. So it's this idea of really going back, and so kind of following the idea of the Sankofa, which is looking back whilst going forward. And I think there's no moment that demands that kind of introspection than right now. And it feels like perhaps that my generation had ignored those aspects of life. And there's these questions that are coming from, millennials who are like, why did we ignore these aspects of life? This is the gap in trying to re-understand ourselves. So can we think in reverse? Can we start from the back in order to understand where we are now? So this project of Commonplace from the Johannesburg perspective is really interested in those kinds of, active local questions where people are more connected to their ancestral world and the spiritual world alongside the digital technologies as well. So for my part of Commonplaces, I've invited two artists, Nolan Oswald Dennis, as well as Nyagalo Maleke, who are both living and working in Johannesburg. Also, two people who have different practices or different ways of kind of investigating, but somehow there are similarities also in the ways that they work. And I think what interests me with them is how they go about, asking these questions or demanding these answers, because I think in their ways is still kind of abstract, so there is an amount of a kind of a refusal that quite interests me, and also a way in which they're interested in kind of re-engineering the decolonial project. A project like this, which thinks about, these vernaculars of the local, has a potential of kind of bringing different voices together to really map from a different, a different perspective that is not straightly political, but it goes to a different realm that really speaks about where we are spiritually and why these things are happening the way that they're happening. The idea of thinking in reverse is one that is, it's not necessarily a title. It is a way that, I'm approaching this project, the way that the artists are approaching, this project and their questions and their search for answers. So there's I think it's about this movement backwards in order to fix what is coming forward.